Of course.
Anyway, anyway, divine favor. Make any unity with lower the temper a little bit, not the temper, but the spiritness. It was very spirited discussion. And it was great that we had that little interlude. Not to take away from the discussion that we're having, I want to just pause here a little bit because I know Susan's hand has been up for a bit. I know that Dr. Nd's hand was up, and I know that we'll continue to come back to discussion. So I would like to just ask Father Ndi and Dr. Mfo to just hold on to any comments that they had to make in response to the previous. And let me ask Susan to speak because she hasn't spoken. If it's on a different theme, we will come back to that. But I want her to speak because her hands has been up for a while.
Thank you so much, Auntie Lillian, and thank you everyone for the great discussion. So before I speak, I just want to appeal that we want this to be as friendly as possible because it's a way forward. So on a personal note, I think that the one thing that prompted this discussion is what has been happening in the church. As a Christian, I get worried when I see Yengwarom getting into the church. And if anyone watched that video, the man who was ahead said something like Nwekamo or something like that. And I found that culture is brought into the church, not just to listen to the gospel, but I think we're trying to put the two together. From everything being said, the church has to go to the community and the church has a message, the church has a goal. And the community will never come to the church when the church doesn't go out. So who is encroaching? I think the church, by bringing in cultural practices like Jo and Fo into the church, knowing fully well that there's a strong spiritual part behind it, I find it like an attack on that culture. I find it like the church is getting weakened, like Uncle Edison said. Christians, the Bible says that when you are coming out, you come out and you're different. And when you're shining your light, the world sees and they come. So when we come out and then we start going back to mix up with the affairs that they are doing, it feels like we are attacking them. Is there a fear of missing out? That is what I see. Somebody I spoke to recently told me that Mbum, iki wrong God, wrong banya, and that is what takes us back to those societies. If the Christian or the church is going into the community, into Fo and Jo, if the goal is because they want to speak the message of Christ, that's fine, but I don't think that is. An experience I had in Kumba, one of the leaders in my church went to Fo and said, oh, it's just a normal society. So when we got to Fo one day, he said, when he stood to pray, one man said, church. So we need to understand and believe that these are two different cultures that cannot be merged. Christianity, I'm glad someone said it, it's not a Jewish culture or a white culture. It is Christ's culture. It is centered around Christ and nothing else. So if we are mindful of what Christianity stands for and want to be authentic and true, we will know that what we are trying to steam up is a time bomb down the road. I see that coming sooner than later, but we have to be careful. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you guys so much, Susan. I'm so happy I gave you the time. But can I just ask you, since you're not one of the panelists, is your view that these two organizations, institutions should exist independently, or you're saying that one cannot belong to both?
I think they should exist independently if we are being sincere, because then Fo people will tell you clearly that Fo is not just the drumming, there is a spiritual part. And when you come to the church, it is not just singing and raising hands. Let's take examples when somebody is bewitched and they have to pray for deliverance. There is a more spiritual aspect of the church which comes with the power in Christ, right? So the two cannot merge. We can try as much as we can, but no. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Dr. Ndi because I think you had your hand out. I called you.
Yeah, my hand had been up long ago. I wanted to, wrap up, come from a perspective of somebody who has been into the field of conflict management, and to ask whether the church and some of these our traditional institutions can collaborate. I want to emphasize collaboration, not really merging. Are there aspects of our tradition, are there aspects of our lives that we could refer as traditional institutions to the church? Are there aspects of, in the church, within the church, which we can think that the traditional institutions are better equipped to handle? I ask these questions because there's been a lot. Is it that the church assumes that it can solve all problems? Because one of the issues which Reverend Father Ndi put up, and which I think there should be an answer, and there's an answer which is coming up, is the fact that there is a Mbum culture project which is trying to kind of capture the essence of our traditions and customs, our history, which would inform some of these debates, because some of these debates, we are doing it without probably understanding the background from which we are coming. He asked some questions as to why it's significant to cut the hair of a woman when she's getting married. All of those things are answered within a document which would soon probably be coming out. So we should know the importance, the significance of some of these are traditional values. And I want to be very emphatic that even though we say traditional institutions are secret, what is discussed in that secret part of it is always to build. And if you see, if one is to judge anything, maybe witchcraft, it's always to build something to solve a problem. It's just like we say doctors have what you call doctors vow to keep something secret. Nobody who is not part of them would know that kind of thing. It's like the tradition also believes that there is something which is just to be understood by those who practice it, not every other person. And I think we should accept it as such, and we should see whether we can have areas where we can collaborate. Because the tradition has its expertise in certain aspects, the church has its expertise in certain aspects. I'll give an example that I know. Right now in church, when somebody goes to get married in church, they ask whether he or she has gone through the traditional marriage before they continue with the process of getting the person married. That is a significant development. That means we value our cultural practices regarding marriage, and that's why we refer to them before we proceed with other church and state issues. So my question was, can these two institutions just collaborate rather than seek to
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going, before I let somebody speak, I'm going to read a question that was put on the forum that I think is very related to that, and maybe it speaks to something that Dr. Mfo said earlier about the Christian faith being supreme and maybe not open to any other institution judging it. But there's a question here that says, just as the church thinks there is an extremist side of the culture, does the church accept that there is also an extremist side of the church? And I think maybe what I want to paraphrase is, are there people that could possibly miss it, even if the word of God as it's in the Bible is sacrosanct, are there people that may be misinterpreting it so that it's not necessarily that the church is bad, but bringing an extremism to church that may lead to, maybe because of a misinterpretation of the Bible. And because in order to collaborate, as Dr. Ndi says, it means that both sides have to come to some consensus. And so there is that question, which I think is really apt. Do you think there's an aspect of the church that is extremist? Dr. Ndi, Father Ndi, you had your hand up before Dr. Ndi speaks, so maybe I'll let you speak.
Yeah, I am particularly not comfortable with the tone that the comments are taking. It is going fierce, and that's not what it is. I am a Catholic priest, and in the Catholic Church, inculturation is not what I feel like doing. Inculturation is something that is institutional, and there are ways to go about it. I belong to the Inculturation Commission of our diocese, and something comes, we put on the table, we examine it, we look at it from one point to the next. What we are having, St. Paul says that for what we preach is not ourselves, but Jesus Christ as Lord, with ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake. The problem we are having for most of the part is that people who are clergy, people who are clad in clothes of the church are beginning to take personal projects and adventuring into what we call in the Catholic Church inculturation. Now, when people begin to do that, you see a problem, because inculturation, understood as it is by the Catholic Church, it is about first a culture you respect, a culture you come into dialogue with. It is not a culture that you come and impose things on. Alwal Shorter, one missionary who came to Kenya, wrote in one of his books, he says, missionary, when you come to a land, remove your shoes, because where you are standing is holy ground. You may thinking, you may end up stepping on the dreams of the people, on their aspirations, forgetting that before you were there, God had been there. The Christianity is showing us the way to God. It is also what our parents have been doing through shades and shadows. Since Christianity is revelation, it shows us in a very clear way. So where are those things that, like Dr. Nzi said, that reunite, that, I mean, African culture and Mbum culture, to that extension, is one of the cultures that is very close to scripture. In our culture, we have, we don't see, family is about the unborn, the living, the dead, the ancestors. That's how we see family, right? The family is not about those who are living. No, those who are still to be born and those who have already died are part of the family. And that's why we have the cult of ancestors. When somebody spoke of the destroying crowns, destroying the breath, I just thought that is, we need to refocus on what it is and follow procedure. For me as a Catholic, there are things I don't do at my whims and caprices. No. What is it supposed to be done? What does the Bible say? What has been the tradition of the church? How has it been done before? So all this fighting we are fighting here, it boils to one point. We need to both ways state our cases clearly, then we can discuss. It's going to be a discussion. Nobody's coming. When you see all these things happening where they go and do this to a fund, or they force this, or people go and do this, or take music and sing as gospel music. What point do you want to make actually? So I think we must go out of our personal spirit of adventure. And if the church that people belong to have a program for enculturation, they should do it orderly with respect for the culture, because the church is not bringing God to us. We knew God before the church came. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. So before.
Hello, madam. Can I speak?
Yes. May I know who it is, because it's Galaxy 7?
Yeah, this is Reverend Koyom for me, the
Okay.
Newfield pastor.
Oh, welcome on board. Thank you, Pastor. Speak.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Good evening to everybody. I just want to chip in contribution. The first thing I want to say is that culture is an inherent part of every human being. You come to the world through a culture, and the gospel comes to meet you in the culture in which you grew up. And so once you give your life to Christ, there are certain aspects of that culture that begin to play itself as you live your life. I am saying that what the church is doing is that God uses the gospel bridges in every culture to communicate the gospel. And when people come to know Christ, there are aspects of their culture that are still sustained in them, and they use it to worship God. And there is no sin involved. As far as the Mbum culture is concerned and the Mbum practices are concerned, I understand that they are institutions that have secrecies. You can call them, they are traditions that are upheld and sustained only by the particular people. So I believe that there's a difference between culture and tradition. Traditional practices are sacred, and they are supposed to be handled only by particular people. But cultural elements in the culture has to be culture. As far as culture is concerned, it can be aspects of it can be used by others. There is no prohibition because it belongs to everybody. For instance, it has been spoken of about the issue of food. I believe that in Christ, God is taking captive every thought and making it subjective to Christ. So if we use the rhythm of Mfu, which I think is a social dance of the Mbumland, there could be hidden issues involved. But our primary issue is to sustain that rhythm, which is a value of the Mbumland, which to me is a cultural, is a gospel bridge given by God. Because when the rhythm is played, you see people come alive. The same thing with the rhythm of the Nju. I don't see anything like encroachment because we are all Mbum people. It is the gift from God. And we use it to celebrate the diversity, in cultural diversity, who God is to us. I don't really see any encroachment in it because there is nobody who is a foreigner in it. And I think we have the right to celebrate God in our cultural diversity, because the Bible tells me that at the end of the age, people shall worship God from every language and nation and tribe with cultural diversity. So I don't really see any encroachment or attack, so to speak. But I believe that there are aspects of our culture that are prohibited. The ones that have to do with secrecies, the ones that have powers like the Ngwarong, the Pso that were mentioned. I think that if the church dares to go into that, we are infringing, we are encroaching. But aspects that have to do like Mbaya, like Mfu, some may say there are issues inside that I don't yet know. The aspects that have to do with Nju, I think that those are the social aspect of our culture, which should speak to everybody who listens. That is my own take about it, and I speak from the ground.
Right. So thank you
I
much.
just thought that it's good for me to register my suggestions.
Wonderful. Reverend, thank you again for
Thank
coming
you.
on board. I will just beg for indulgence and get the reaction of Tamfomi, Tatamfu and Tamfomi Ndimanjong. Just 2 minutes reaction each, please, to what our field pastor just said. What's your reaction to that? Let's start with Tamfomi Ndimanjong.
Is he there?
Hopefully.
He's trying to unmute.
Yeah.
Please, you have 2 minutes.
I'm here. Yeah, the Reverend talked about, I think it is not really the things secret about Mwarong Mfu Ngiri, for example, as the things sacred. You know, I think what is much more important about these institutions is that they have what is sacred and should be respected as such, not really things secret as such. Well, we do not know how the Reverend Father makes a biscuit into Holy Communion. We don't know. But when he says this is Holy Communion and others see it as a piece of biscuit, he is saying it is Holy Communion and consequently it is sacred. So those of the people that are operating in the cultural realm or with regards to tradition are saying that there are the things sacred that should be respected as such. I went to a Baptist elementary school in Kom, and then the next village to come was Babanke. And then it was a Baptist school. So we had the tendency to kind of mimic as students or as elementary school pupils, we do those things that children do, like try to mimic the Catholic Church in their mass, rhetorical mass that they normally have.
You
and
have
then,
1 more minute for me.
Yeah, then we inserted this aspect about whether a Babanke person will go to heaven. Then we will respond that no, they cannot go to heaven because when the Reverend Father was passing, the Babanke people said he was as white as a white monkey. Well, and if you did that and the teachers got you, the teachers were not Catholic, okay? Yeah, they will whip us seriously for making fun of a Catholic practice that is sacred. Okay, so I'm just saying that we have the things culturally and traditional that are sacred, and we want them to be maintained. So not so much because they are secret, but they are sacred.
Thank you so much. So what do you think about the last, the previous speaker, Reverend Pastor from Du?
Yeah, Reverend Koyo, I think given that he's on the ground, he's living some of these issues right back home, and I have a lot of respect for his position so far. That notwithstanding, if we ask the church a question like, what does the church think about our traditional medicines? For instance, somebody who mends the bone, a broken bone, when cope, you will find out that when cope in the Mbum culture and tradition is essentially a spiritualist. And we have seen many of them mending broken bones in Mbum land, and they even go faster than hospitals. But the position of the church is that because of the spirituality in it, Christians should not go to Mwenkop, because before Mwenkop performs his activity, he consults maybe the gods, Ima-Seng, or that kind of thing. And you find out that when Dr. Ndi was talking about collaboration between the church and our tradition, there has been collaboration when the church came. It is now that the church is encroaching into culture and tradition that there seems to be a problem with collaboration, because churches were built thanks to the efforts of our traditional societies. And when we are talking about the developmental aspect of our tradition, for instance, we are in the villages we are today because these traditionalists fought wars and conquered territories and became those villages. And one of the ways of maintaining their territorial integrities is through these traditional societies. I take the Mfu, for instance. The Mfu is a group that is constantly there to go for war and protect their village against people encroaching. So if we are trying to, demonize that element of the culture and the tradition, which is the spirituality in Mfu, the spirituality in Warong, the spirituality in So, and call it anti-development and call it satanic, and that we want to cleanse the culture by removing it and then remain with the culture as the church perceives it, I think that is where there is a problem, which has to be addressed and squarely. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Maybe before I give the floor to...
Please, can I just respond to that?
Yes, Doctor, can you just give 1 minute to Professor Bomba to have his reaction before you react to that, please? Professor Elias Bomba, are you on board, please?
Gee, I joined very late, and I apologize. I was on another project, and I did not hear all of the presentations. But I think suffice it to say that this is a very interesting dialogue, very, very interesting dialogue, which there is precedence for it. Cameroon, I think very early on in the 60s, had started a very robust dialogue on Christianity and culture. And leading churchmen like the late Father Engelbert Mbum and many who followed after him were able to spell out these dimensions very carefully. So much so that quite early in the history of the church in Cameroon, those of you who were students in Yaoundé University remember at the liturgical innovation that was really grounding Christianity in Africa at Njong Melen, where priests actually introduced very deep cultural practices into the church, which of course was duped the dancing church. But that was a very, very serious attempt which was taking place both in Yaoundé at the time and then also in Kinshasa, where local markets were developed to actually address the need to make the church truly African. I think I can only say that it is actually quite sad that many times aspects of culture are often demonized. What we look at in Mbum society are not really secret society as Europeans called it. These are simply closed associations. Why are they closed associations? They are closed because you have to be initiated, member. But we have grown up knowing that these are secret societies. We even use those words. Even highly educated Mbum people still use the term secret societies. There are really no such thing as secret societies. What we're dealing with are closed association, which membership is open only to those who have been initiated. And so for that reason, I think this is a good beginning. I mean, I couldn't tell you how much more strongly I object to the kind of theology that tries to draw a very strong distinction between the people's culture and the text of the sacred scriptures. And what we also, again, this reflects my liberal theological bias, but we know that the texts of scripture grow out of a culture, grow out of our history. And we always have to, I think, look beyond that and see the underlying factors that led to the creation of the text. Even though it is a sacred text, when we begin to look at those things, I think it will become very clear that the...
Prof, you have 1 more minute, please. Thanks.
Okay, the broadband is much more fluid than we think it is always. And so this is a good conversation. I hope it should be continued because the Mbum culture is not a danger to Christianity. If anything, Christianity is a serious danger to Mbum culture, and something ought to be done so that we develop both an intellectual, cultural, and spiritual understanding of the things that hold us together. Again, my apologies for coming late, and I'm sorry I missed all of the earlier presentations. Thank you very much.
No, you're welcome. So Dr. Philemon, while I hand the microphone back to Mangiri, you have the floor, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome, Prof. First of all, I want to say that discussion like this, we all come to very different perspectives. And those perspectives definitely influence our evaluation, our definitions, and our conclusions. And it becomes very difficult to find a common ground when the perspectives are held in very strong terms, which is what I think is part of our difficulty. That's why I think I like what Dr. Richard was talking about, collaboration. And I think I want to say that they have a very important assignment they're doing. We need to understand the substance behind the form that we call tradition. We know the form. What are the substantive issues? Why do we do what we do? Why do we shave Ngwabu's head? Why do we spend 4 days to mourn for a woman and 3 days for a man? I think answering these questions will even help us to probably realize that there are some things that we are hanging onto that our forefathers would not. So I think that project is important. Get us to the fundamentals of why we do what we do. Then that can help us to begin to see where to go from there. I think that is important. Then the last thing I want to say for now, as far as this is concerned, is that the discussion is going to continue, but an earlier speaker said he foresees an attack on the church. in clear terms like that, I think that is not healthy for us.
That's
Force is not going to solve it. Because, as I said at the beginning, as a Mbum person, I have a right to my tradition. You don't have a right to it more than me because you belong there. We all belong to the traditions and to the cultures. We may be interpreting them differently, but they are ours. And you cannot attack me because I'm doing that. So probably, I'm just thinking, probably, if our discussion doesn't go to some logical conclusions, we may end up in a situation where those things that the traditionalists do, which they think should be like that, they do them. I've seen people dance nju in church, but I've not seen any Christian go to the nju house or to tell them not to dance. I've seen them dance mfu in church. I've not seen them go to the mfu house to tell them not to dance. So if they are dancing the nju in church and singing the songs that they think give glory to God and dance the rhythm of the nju, how does that disturb or destroy the nju that is being danced in the village? So I think we need to be a little more accommodating and listening so that we can discuss. And at the end of the day, as I said before, and I think it's still my very strong desire that someday we'll even just ask the questions, what aspects of our traditions are helping us to be a better people? I know at least 2 traditional dances that actually died, and the church has revived them in those villages. They died. The church did not kill them. They died because of the intrinsic problems within them. But I hear them now being danced in those villages because of the influence of the church. Thank you.
Speak on.
Thank you so much, Reverend Fo. I think we've covered a lot, although they've actually just been framed around 2 questions. But those couple of questions were really at the heart of our discussion today. But I wanted to just recap, because prior to us having this discussion today, we had some people record some videos of some incidences that they thought could bring some of the conflicts that we seem to be noticing a lot in our society today. And I think, as all the speakers said, when they drew back to history, I think Christianity was welcome, and the organizations or the 2 institutions were already working in collaboration. I think somebody made the comment that some of the churches were built when the Ngwarung or the Mfu or whatever came and corralled people to go and build those churches. So the question is, if we seem to be having a conflict today, what is causing this modern day conflict? And does that tie into, and I think there were examples, I know we've not talked about that, and I think since the Ndufield pastor is on, and the examples that were given were right in the Ndufield, and maybe he would speak to that. And when I heard somebody talk about the potential for the church being attacked, I think they were in relation to some of these attacks that had happened in the churches, particularly in Ndufield. And so I wanted to talk particularly burning on some of the artifacts. Dr. Mfo spoke to them, and some of the aspects of, I think even though they're bringing some of the traditional dances to church, do the traditional people agree with that? Are those some of the potential sources of conflict? And there was an example in one of the videos as well about women prohibiting from making and selling sha. And so that was another source of conflict, particularly in Ndufield. And, you know, I just wanted to see if the Ndufield pastor can speak to this, because I don't think there's a hegemony of thought within the Christian church as to how, you know, these things are handled. The Catholic Church has very defined, and as the father said, and I think there's more individual interpretations and practices within the Baptist Church, maybe the Presbyterian. I don't know whether the pastor can speak to this. Does the church have a view on this, or are these isolated practices that could, you know, facilitate some of these conflicts that we can see between the church and some of the traditional institutions.
Thank you very much, Madam. Let me start off by saying that when the conflicts erupted between the church in Ndu and the Saw of Ngojit because of a cassette that was produced, I was not on seat here at the time. But that is one of the factors that drove me into writing this book, which I titled Drinking the Gospel in African Cups. And in that book, I tried to do a research on some of these institutions that we just turn off and throw stones at them. And I realized that we have values in our culture, which is God-given, and we can use it to honor God. Personally, I believe that the conflicts erupted at that time the way it did because we touched the untouchable. Because I believe that the Saw was, it has its secrecy and its hidden aspect of it that you become part of that institution by initiation, as Dr. Baumach said. And I think that to try to redeem or to use their rhythm or an aspects of that institution when you are not an initiated member is an encroachment. So I think that that was where the church actually went beyond its boundary. But when it comes to aspects of our culture, which I call the social aspect of our culture, that is the we that God has made us to be. And I think we have the right to redeem aspects of it and use it to honor God. The other one you raised has to do with, that is raised in this forum, has to do with prohibiting or disciplining somebody who is selling sha or something like that. I think that sounds foreign to me because in that very book that I have just mentioned, I stated there clearly that in every community, as far as I know, local community, God gave them ways of producing their local drinks. And it is going to be an overstatement or an exaggeration to prohibit somebody from selling sha. I think that those are issues that God has not spoken about them categorically. So I don't really believe in that, and I don't think that has taken place in Ndu field. If it is, then I'm yet to know, and I think I will not tolerate that. The other aspect, which was mentioned in this forum, had to do with the baptism of His Royal Highness, the Fount of Mibgo. And by the grace of God, I'm actually the one who baptized him. I want to personally inform this forum that it was a God-given privilege for me. And what you saw so simply was preceded by a long time of free counseling and spirit-led direction that also offered the fount freedom to choose to do what he decided to do. He was not under any coercion. The kingmakers were there, and it went the way you saw it. I have great respect for tradition, and I believe that to counsel the fount to a level where he realizes that there is a supreme God over him and decide to remove his cap to be immersed, and then the kingmaker puts it back immediately, is a demonstration of total surrender to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And I think that is a redeemed culture. It's not a destruction of culture. I also want to plead that the language that is used has been used by one of the speakers, that he foresees an attack on the church. To me, it sounds so hard. And I think that it would be good for us to be careful that we don't incite and raise up sleeping dogs and end up producing problem from a discussion like this. We are living here and seeing institutions like Mfu houses, like Samba houses that have collapsed. I mean, just collapsed. Nobody went destroying them. And so if we redeem the rhythm of some of those social institutions, we are instead trying to sustain them, like Dr. Philemon said. We're instead trying to sustain them and to cause that which is our value not die away. You need to see when, sorry?
No, thank you very much. If you just wrap up your thought, that would be great.
Yeah, let me wrap up. You just need to see when the Nju rhythm is played with gospel lyrics, how the old mother who claims that she has no physique come alive and worship God. It's interesting. I think these are some of the things I can respond to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Time for me, Manjong.
Yeah, I think I just want to at least observe a few things. The issue of the music that was mimicking some of the traditional music or sacred music, I think that was not really all of the problem. Part of the problem was that in that music, there was a video part to it that was misrepresenting those institutions. The Mwerong does not actually play the role of healing. The Mwerong does not heal. The does not heal. So to have presented it like people go to the Depsot to be healed instead of going to the hospital was a misrepresentation. Same for the Mwerong. And then I think with regards to the field pastor talking about the important baptism, which of course was important, was that consultation was done with the phone and then with the kingmakers of the village. And our culture actually does not belong to one village and to one set of kingmakers. How we get baptized is not specified in the Bible. So to say, you must take off your hat, for example, to be baptized, is not something that is specific in the Bible.
Nobody said that, sir.
Yeah, so the problem people are having is that what would have been the reason that that baptism had to be followed through to that extent, with the limitations that the font had to come to the baptismal pool with his hat on when others did not come to the baptismal pool with their hats on, and then took it off when he was in the pool, and then had it back on when he was out. I think the problem that the culturalists and the traditionalists are having with that is that the sacred part that goes with ordinary people not seeing the head of the fawn is tampered with when that happens, because people who thought that, oh, that's something that can never be done. Here the church did it, and then the heavens did not come down. Well, when people begin to think in that light, it leads them to thinking in that light about some other cultural prohibitions. Maybe, for example, you can sleep with your brother's wife. Okay, so maybe I can sleep with my brother's wife and I'm not sure anything will happen.
Time for me.
And then I can do it and maybe nothing will happen. So it is that aspect again, which when I come down to the fact that, yeah, the theologians may be very informed about what they are doing, but the ordinary Christian is not as informed. I don't want to use the word ignorance again, may not be as informed, and then they take it and they use it in ways that were not really intended by the theologian. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for me. I know that there are two people had their hands, Anna and Edison Fu. I don't know if you were speaking on this matter or a different topic. Anna, is your question related to this particular subject of discussion or something else?
On this topic.
Okay, please speak, and then I'll give the chance to Edison Fu.
Okay, so my question is particularly related to what the pastor just said. He said he baptized the fawn. So my question is particularly related to this. The fawn is regarded in every land as the person that upholds the customs and traditions of that particular area, right? So there are certain aspects, certain practices that the fawn is required, according to tradition, to perform for his people, and the people believe in that. So like Father Paul Biya said before, the church or the white man did not bring God to us. We knew God before, but our traditions made it in such a way that our parents, our forefathers before us had a different way of worshiping their God and the supreme God. They knew that fawn did not acknowledge that God is supreme only on that day, because I think my grandfather, though he didn't go to church, he knew there was a supreme God. Only he had his own way of worshiping that supreme God. So my question is, this fawn who now gets initiated into the church, after his initiation, because I think, I do not know tradition very well, but I'm thinking that for you to be crowned fawn, there is a series of initiations that are done, which permit you to be able to carry out some of those practices that you are supposed to carry in order to satisfy the people you lead. So how is he now going to carry out those same practices and still carry out the practices that the church require him to do? And my question too goes in this way. It will be the same as if tomorrow I'm a Catholic, so I'm always going to talk about the priest. If I see a priest who now decides that he wants to be initiated as a member of the Ngwarong, for example, how is that priest going to be able to carry out the sacrifice of the Mass and at the same time carry out the sacrifice of the Ngwarong? Because these two things, these two initiations require different ways of worship. I think that is where, in my opinion, that is what is bringing conflict in our land, because there is a lack of understanding on all of this. So my question to you is, how is this pastor, how is that bishop, the fawn, carrying out his traditional mission as the fawn of his people, and at the same time, how is he leading his initiation into your Christianity? Sorry, into the Christianity.
Thank you, Anna.
Yes, can I vividly respond to that?
Yes, Pastor.
Oh, thank you. The first thing from my perspective is that as a minister of the gospel, I have the mandate to bring the gospel of Jesus Christ, that good news, to everyone who listens to it. And I brought that good news, had multiple counseling sessions with the fawn and his notables. And there were things that he chose to do. I didn't dictate to him to do this or not do this. And in a state like Cameroon that has freedom of worship, things of faith that somebody has conviction about from his heart to do, and he is so informed about what he wants to do and decides to do, after he was given multiple options, I could not say do this or don't do this. So even though Tam for me said that he tampered with the tradition of the Mbum people in general. Well, it's not in my place to have told him to do that or not do that. But I think that as the fawn of the land, who had passed through various stages that I did not even know of, I was primarily concerned with sharing the gospel. And as long as he confessed Christ and decided to freely show to the public, I guided him that way accordingly. So coming back to the question by the previous speaker, how is he going to perform his duty? It's left for him, because it's not in my place to tell him how to do it. As long as he confessed Christ, he goes back to his palace. It is left for him to choose how to do the things, which one to do and which one not to do. And I would not be one of those persons who will tell him to destroy the artifacts. In fact, I was so saddened to hear what happened, and I saw the videos. So I think that we have treasures, we have traditional values, we have cultural values that we need to preserve. At the same time, we have the mandate to bring the gospel to those same people, because they carry in them the image of God that needs to be saved.
Thank you, Reverend. I think there was Edison 4 that had his hand up. Are you still on? Because I don't seem to see you. Edison 4. If Edison is not on, does anybody else want to speak to this, or any of the panelists or audiences?
I think I have, there is Mr. Nganji who was talking about this different fora. I'm not sure if Nganji Edwin is on board. If he's on board, please, what's your view on this, please?
I see him on. No, he, okay.
Yeah, my apologies. I've been driving and then participating in one way or the other. So sometimes my texts might not come across as it's supposed to be. But I think I've enjoyed it, and enjoyed that we are holding a very meaningful conversation. And I think the goal is to further, our goals as Mbum people. The truth is that there's going to be different views all the time, regardless. And I'm sure that what we are attempting to do is to broker a deal whereby there is harmony, in our existence as Mbum people. Because how far we've gone is a very difficult thing to undo. Christians, Mbum people who are Christians will always remain Mbum Christians. Those who are traditionalists will stay that way. When they find conflict and they want to address it, the proper way to do it is to probably either discourse, or if they think that they don't want to hold any discourse, they can look at the institutions in place that can review the situations and bring in law if possible. So I think that I would always say that whatever we discuss here, how does it benefit the general Mbum people? How do other people benefit from it? So we should look at ways how we can expand this to other people so that they learn. One thing that I read recently was, I think, The Republic by Plato, and who was the allegory of the cave. And in that, I understood that as a philosopher, his main idea was that when anybody is enlightened, they will come out from what imaginary is a cave, and then see the light and know that what they had known before was just mere shadow and not real things. So this, I think I hold to that opinion as well. People are enlightened, then they decide personally to, change based on what they think is beneficial to them. So instead of looking for ways of holding discussions and instead probably that threatening or things like that, I don't think it's the best way to go. It is not us as Mbum people. If we want to develop, we need to find a way that we can all live and, make life better for each other. So thank you very much. I've learned, and I hope that I continue to learn from all the learned people we have on this forum. So thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. Time for me. Let me just go to Joe Bashi. And before I do that, there was a question here, and I'm going to read it so that the two theologians can think about it while we go to Joe. Somebody said from the discussion, I think Yembe, from the discussion, I am made to understand that when the church came, these traditional practices were condemned, and those who practiced them were considered evildoers. What has actually changed that the church is now wanting to swallow what she had vomited? That's one question. Then another one is a comment. I want to read this because we may not get a chance to get to it. Dr. Philemon said earlier that in the past, there was a lot of ignorance that individuals grew to know better. In the past, extremists had the views of Shah, which we realize today that it is a unique blessing to the Mbum culture. The problem of Christianity is drinking and drunkenness. So I'm going to just basically what has changed that the Christian faith is now absorbing what it had initially swallowed. And I'm pretty sure they had spoken to it before, but I'll let you guys talk to it later. Let me, maybe part of your summing, but I'll let Joe Bashi talk before I go to the panelists. Joe, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Mama, and thank you for the great coordination. I'm so happy that we are finally on this topic, which is one of those things that has given me nightmares. And nightmares because I see some of these things, though it is difficult to say there's a conflict and that there's even going to be a more violent conflict in the future. These are realities, we are just saying them. People might think that we are trying to threaten us. They say, no, that is not a threat. If we don't face the truth, we are going to face some of those ugly things which we would not like to see, because we have seen such classes already. What I'm saying, what I just want to ask the Reverend Pastor who baptized the phone, he had the advantage to counsel him and to talk to him. And talking to him and counseling him means he wants the best. And if you want the best and you see some of those most respected aspects of the Mbum culture, which keeps our mystery, like the phone never removing the cap in public, and you counsel him, but you let him remove his cap in public, the consequences, you know them. And how can we say we are not encroaching in the traditional aspect of our lives? We are just trying to say this. You might want to include some of the practices into the church. But I look at the Reverend D, who said they have a commission which might sit down and deliberate on some of these things before they see what they accept or what they don't accept. But it seems in the Baptist church, I do what I want. And that is where the problem is. Sorry for being a little bit long, but I'm worried that even individuals are putting their projects into it, and I can give a long list of pastors. In fact, I'm one of those who made the statement that the church came and the traditionalists and our association and societies welcomed them. The Chumbos went out to remove people of their homes from their homes to build churches. But these churches came and settled down, and they don't want people who go into those societies or those lodges to come into the church. And how exactly? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. I believe the pastor had spoken to the fact that he did what he canceled the fund, but
Please,
I think
notwithstanding, can I still just respond to that very briefly?
We can do that in a minute or two, Pastor. That would be great.
Please. I respect the Inquisition, but I want to say that for some of you, you might not know, the predecessor of the present fund of Mbibgo was a Christian and was baptized as well, not by me. And he was not baptized with his cap on, and he used to come to church and would remove his cap. So those are issues of faith that I could not be dictating to him. And by the way, it was not a new thing in that particular village. So that is one of the reasons why I let it go, because there are issues of faith.
Thank you so much, Pastor. Time for me, we're going to go to the panelists to have a final closing remarks. I know that I've been informed that we only have 15 minutes. I think it's now 14 minutes. And I think it's only fair that we go to our panelists. I don't know whether we have to do it in any particular order to maybe give their final remarks and, before we can closes. Peter, do you want to say anything else before we do that?
No, well, probably just get to the panelists in any order, and thereafter we can just have a vote of thanks here.
All right, thank you. So I'm just going to go in no particular order, Dr. Philemon Four, if you can speak, and please keep it to maybe 2 minutes, 2.5 maximum, so that we can have some closing remarks at the end.
Okay, fine, no problem. The first thing I just want to say is that the discussion should continue, and that I plead to the conservative traditionalists that they should know that Mbum Christians have a right to Mbum tradition. So they should not speak as if they have to impose on us what we do and what we do not do. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing is that let us ask the question as to what are we actually looking for? The change that the church is trying to bring about, what is it? What are they looking for? Are they trying to really destroy, or are they looking for a way that will make life better? Let's look at the substance of the matter and not just the form and throw it away. And then finally, as I said, given our divergent perspectives, I still come back to what I think is most important. In what ways are our culture making our lives better? You know, sometimes I feel very bad because we have given so much energy into discussing Warong and Fu, and our girls don't know what it takes to get married in our culture. Our young people do not know the aspect of our cultures that they should know, that influences their day-to-day lives and actually even has a great impact on their future, because we are busy discussing institutions that actually do not even have that much impact on the life of the ordinary Mbum person. And I think we need to focus on what will help us to become better and emphasize that and discuss that so that our culture becomes a development tool in the most effective and most productive way. Thank you. I hope the discussion will continue.
So I'm going to go to time for Edison.
Thank you. Maybe I want to clear the air because there's something like a procès d'intention that I'm getting from this. From this discussion. I hear that I said the church shall be attacked, which some panelists or a panelist and some authorities of the church consider it a threat. I don't think I said the church was going to be attacked. Instead, I said there is a potential source of conflict coming as a result of this encroachment. I have to clarify and make that very clear. There is, as Dr. Joe Bashi reiterated, the understanding of the traditionalists, some of whom I have talked to, do not see it maybe the way the church is seeing it. They think that the encroachment is aimed at destroying what they, hold so dearly. That said, we should not like be hypocritical on this. They say in Limon, "Weki Changnu Amaka." That is, this institution didn't just come like that, and they are sustained spiritually. And the biblical perspective is against that spirituality of these societies. So while the church is saying, okay, we like it, if you like it, institutionalize it so that those Mbum people who belong to it will not feel as if they are going to hell, they have been condemned, they now belong to Satan. And I think that stigmatization on the part of the church should stop. The church actually should apologize to the Mbum community for having stigmatized them for so long. The church should seek redress to make sure that Mbum traditionalists are now considered as part of the society who may not go to hell. I am happy with the position of Reverend Father Ndi, who says God existed before the churches came, and God is still with us, he will exist again. So the stigmatization that our people have been going through for belonging to these societies and practicing their tradition by the church should be redressed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Farandi?
I come from a world that believes that when things are like this, they need to be talked about because it's all about gathering people. It's all about existing together. And I am very clear that our ancestors sought God in ways that the church refers to as in shades and shadows, but in Christ we see God clearer. And the mission of the church is to encourage people to come to God in that clearer path that that Jesus has shown us. But since we can only have a church in Du, we can only have a church in Kambe, we can only have a church in Tang, we must be able to let the church plant itself in Tabike, whether it is not a stranger to the people. And that is why inculturation at every level takes place. Prof spoke about the Njomelen ride that took place in Yaoundé. There is a Congolese ride that took place in Kinshasa with the late cardinal who was there. I've forgotten the name, Joseph Mukasa or something. I've forgotten the name. But what the point is simple is that we are going to get to that point, which is going to be a point where we all feel comfortable. People are saying that the Catholic Church did this. I want to show this book. The title of the book is When the Pope Asks Forgiveness. John Paul II knelt in Rome before the year 2000 Jubilee, and he told the people to forgive the sins of the sons and daughters of the church, because the church as an institution does not err, its sons and daughters do. And one of the sections is the way they have treated blacks, and I'm sure of their cultures. So if you expected some church to write a letter to Mbum people, you will wait till the kingdom come. But I think the church as an institution spoke it out. There are things that have been done in the past, and that's why the Catholic Church still has councils in which they begin to renew things to say it was like this. Now with the changing times, how do we interpret the unchanging word of God to people in these changing times? And that's why we must also follow the culture of the people, meet them in their terms, but not dilute the message of the gospel. That's very clear. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Father. Time for me. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, plus seniority.
You're always trying to get more time.
Yeah, what I need in closing to say is, I do plead with the church officials. Maybe there's something that they seem to miss doing. Farandi says the Catholic Church has a way of going about it that is more systematic. The other thing that I may want to suggest to the other leaders is that if propositions are made to them, or they have an inclination to go about something, if you can commit that to prayer, yeah, don't be surprised that it's coming from me. If you can commit that to prayer, and you say you have prayed diligently and got the okay from the Almighty to go about it, maybe you go about it in ways that some of us may not have problems with. But we are tempted to think that that other aspect might be missing from your procedure on how you are going about some of this. And when people think that you cannot go to the palace and do the things that you are supposed to do to the phone without your cap on, and the phone cannot receive you with honor when you have reached that level of honor without his cap on. So if the phone is that important with regards to our appearing before him with our caps, but then God, who is the King of Kings, probably, if the church had gone into it, would probably have realized that even phones should appear before him as their phone of phone, their caps on. Yeah, we respect our Wi-Fi, so we put on our caps when we go to them, and then we respect our phones even much more, and then we put on our caps when we go to them. So we are just saying that if the church had thought about the fact that as Mbum people, we can go through the key thing with our hat on, because that issue of even taking our caps off when we get into the church is not something that is in scripture anywhere. It's just, again, a cultural practice from abroad that was introduced to us. And the white people have a reason to put their caps when they're getting in the house. Most white old houses will have a place at the door where people will put their caps when they go in. And so taking off your cap when you're getting into a building has nothing to do with making it a rule of the church that we must take our cap off when we go into the church. And if all of this had been systematically taken into consideration and given to prayer, it shouldn't be a thing that would have been talked about. If the missionaries came and then they said, oh, you know, if you're a weaver, hey, come to church with your cap on. And if you're a weaver, we'll baptize you with your cap on. Probably we wouldn't be doing it. We're just doing it because some of us saw what the missionaries did, and we thought is the way to do it, as divined by heaven, and then we are continuing to do it. And then when we are continuing to do it in ways that people now see, maybe the old firm did it, and it was not just to do the present there, and after that nobody talked about it. But now when you do it, and the mass media or whatever, social media takes it out there to everybody, it gives a completely different connotation to it. So
thank you.
Just take my prayer thing, work on it, you'll get an answer from above on how to go about it, and then you may find an answer on how to go about it without creating conflict. Thank you.
And when we give the answer, please accept it.
Yeah. What a final confirmation of everything. This is the coordination between the two institutions that Dr. Ndi had preached about. Thank you so much. For me, I just like to say, and I'll hand it over to Peter. I'll try to put it in 1 minute, maybe 30 seconds. It's just been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure for me trying to moderate this. I think I saw some of the videos, and I know some of the people here personally, and I was kind of dreading, like I was going to corralling these people to stick to their time and stick the folks without, being a little bit too hard. I have actually enjoyed it a lot. I've come as somebody who is a traditionalist. I have been really gratified to see that nobody is saying to do away with the culture, while there is still some discordance between what the traditionalists say and what maybe some aspects of the Christian faith, not all denominations, where there's some conflict. I think we've started a conversation. It was great to have the field pastor of Ndu on board. And I would just say, as a personal thing for me, that one of the disappointments I had was going to spend Christmas in Ndu and finding out that there was no Shah, and that they were not bringing into the mission. And I have sisters and Reverend Pastor, some of them are in your own feeling that will not cook Shah. And these are my blood sisters. And please go talk to them.
Oh, please come.
That
we will
Shah is
have
really
Shah
part of the Christian, the Christmas that I remember, and there's nothing wrong with Shah. And I'm so happy. I didn't want to bring in that personal thing, but it's been great. It's been a great discussion, and I think we've started a good conversation. And as Dr. Mfo says, this is going to continue, and we're going to come to an area that everybody can live with. And I'll hand it over to Peter. Thank you guys so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I think kudos to the main coordinator and the main moderator.
You did a great job.
Right. So
again, wonderful coordination, Mangiri.
Mangiri,
indeed,
actually,
you did a great job.
Right, she did a wonderful job, and I think
another new culture, Mashi.
That's right, and that is the next.
The Mangiri was created in a.
So one of the next topics will be time for me, Mashe and Mangiri. How did it come about that today we have Mangiri? You're not going to be the moderator at that time. You're going to be a speaker. Again, thank you, Reverend Dr. for Philemon. Thank you, Tatam for Edison. Thank you, Father Paul D. Thank you, Tam for Mindy Manjong. And this forum is yours. It's a platform where at all times we can always exchange ideas, There is no winner on this platform, mark you. Whether it's a discourse, it's a presentation, or it's a debate, the Mbum people are the winners. So again, I give a cap. I owed my cap to all who have been able to be present, and the wonderful participation of our speakers. They've just been above, they've gone above and beyond. So again, once again, thank you for the connection. Thank you for Professor Bomba and all those who were able to come in. And one of the persons who have been engineering at the background is one of our moderators as well, called Tashi Nelson Tawe. Thank you very much for what you're doing at the background. And again, we'll have a next session within the next 2 to 3 months. You'll be informed about the topic and of course, who are going to be the speakers. Once again, we say thank you.
Don't forget our timekeeper.
Thank you.
Of course, the timekeeper is right there. Mangala Iyaje, we cannot forget her because we get her from time to time, say, hey, you need 1 minute, and so on. Yeah, so basically, she's one of our best. Yeah.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Sibero, Sibero, Mbum.
Hello.